They thought we'd crawl. After the orbital bombardment of New Istanbul, after the massacre at Europa's mining colonies, after the silent destruction of Earth's western satellites, they expected a plea. They expected folded hands and broken voices. But we don't plead. I stood aboard the Valiant Ash, dead center of a battle group made of steel, ash, and fury, engines humming like growls behind thick black plating. Lights dimmed for war, not ceremony, not mercy, war. Cold light from the system's dying star bled across the hulls, casting long shadows over our fleet as we broke warp into the atmosphere of Veridon Prime, the Council's stronghold, the heart of the ones who watched us burn and did nothing. The chamber they sat in, their vaunted sanctum of galactic reason, was built on marble and arrogance. 300 species, none of them human. Not since they expelled our envoy, not since they called us genetically volatile, not since they let the Arcana erase our cities without sanction. We warned them once, and now they would feel us. On my command deck, no one spoke. Helmets on, armor sealed, orders understood before they were spoken. These men weren't soldiers. They were revenants. Each one carried loss like oxygen in their lungs. Sons who watched orbital fire melt oceans. Fathers who buried pieces of their daughters, if they found any. The sound of the metal groaning under tension filled the silence. That and breath. I raised one finger. "Targeting array," I said. It clicked to life. Static. Then lock. The sanctum dome glowed white through the cloud banks of Veridon, a pristine eye watching over the filth of the Council's hypocrisy. No shields, no defense network. Their arrogance was total, but they forgot humans remember. We remember everything. "Confirmation?" I asked. The reply was flat. "Confirmed. Chamber occupied. All council members present." Good. I stared at the coordinates for 6 seconds. 6 seconds of ghosts behind my eyes. Then I dropped my hand. "Fire." The ship didn't roar. It howled. 3 magnetolance strikes. Pure tungsten and human spite, accelerated to near-light speed. No dramatic countdown. No cinematic pause. The dome vanished in silence, atomized mid-sentence. We didn't cheer. We didn't smile. "Objective complete," came the voice beside me. I nodded. Once. They would call it terrorism. They would call us monsters. Let them. Because humanity had sent its reply, in silence, fire, and death, and the galaxy had no words left for it. The Valiant Ash pulled away from Veridon's orbit like a predator slipping back into deep water. No fanfare, no victory music. The sky burned behind us. They'd see it from the outer rings, from their cities, their shrines, their temples of negotiation, now rubble. The message wasn't just in the strike, it was in the silence afterward. We didn't broadcast a claim. We didn't demand acknowledgement. Humanity no longer asked to be seen. We showed them what they ignored. The silence on the command deck was heavier now. Not tense, just final. Like an execution done right. I stepped off the bridge into the central corridor, past men still strapped in armor. Faces unreadable behind polished visors. Some clutched keepsakes, dog tags, rings, photos fused into their HUDs. But no one prayed. We stopped praying when the last Earth embassy burned. There were no gods in the stars, only enemies and those waiting to be. Down the hall, Commander Ithron waited for me, one of the few non-humans we trusted. Barely. He wore our armor, but not by right. He'd earned it, bled for it. A defector from the Velari Dominion, the same species that auctioned human prisoners after the siege of Proxima, like pets at a trading post. Ithran had slit his own commander's throat and brought us the coordinates. Not out of guilt, out of debt. "You've silenced them," he said. I didn't respond. He followed me to the war room, boots echoing down metal. That sound. Steel on steel. It's how we measure the calm between storms. I asked you once, Ithran continued, what it would take for humanity to stop. I looked over my shoulder at him. You remember what I said? His mandibles twitched. You said, when we forget what they did to us. And do you think we've forgotten? He shook his head. You've marked it into the stars. I turned away and entered the room. The command table lit up before I spoke. Interactive maps glowed red across a dozen systems. Council trade routes, military outposts, civilian colonies, all vulnerable, all silent since the strike. We didn't need to wait for a response. We knew it was coming. They'd call it a war crime, a desecration of peace, an unprovoked act of vengeance, and they'd be right. That was the point. I tapped a marker. Terev outpost, 2 light days from here, unarmed, mining relay. Ithran stiffened. That's a civilian site. They supplied fuel to Arkana war cruisers. They didn't fire the weapons. They kept the engines running. He fell silent. He didn't argue again. He knew by now, human justice didn't parse guilt the way the council did. Guilt wasn't about intent, it was about consequence. The crew filtered in, all of them dark-eyed, quiet, not dead inside, just burned out. Every man here had nothing left to lose. That's what made them so calm. That's what made us dangerous. I looked across the room. They waited. No ceremony, just orders. We hit Terev next, fuel lines first, barracks second. Keep the blast radius small. No glassing. Leave enough for them to rebuild. Then remember why they have to. A nod. No hesitation. War had become our language. 2 days later, we dropped on Terev without warning. No beacons, no hails, just entry fire and boots on rock. The sky broke apart when our landers came in, streaking through the dust storms like fire falling from heaven. Workers scattered. Miners threw down tools. Some knelt, some ran. Didn't matter. No shots fired. No resistance. They'd heard what we did to Veradon, and they believed it. I stepped onto black soil with 3 squads behind me. The heat came up through our boots, dry, electric. Machines sputtered in the wind, atmospheric drills, processing plants, towers built from metals we couldn't pronounce but bled for every day. The facility manager stood trembling near the control tower, a thin, wiry man, skin pale from underground labor. He raised his hands. We're not armed, he croaked. I stopped 3 feet from him. I know. You don't have to do this. We didn't attack Earth. No, I said, drawing my sidearm. But you powered those who did. His mouth opened, some plea forming. I shot him clean through the chest. His body fell hard, like cargo, like nothing. Behind me, one of the squad leaders tapped his comm. Commander, fuel lines disabled. Drones planting charges. Good. Civilians? I turned to the gathered crowd of workers, hundreds of them, silent now, wide-eyed, standing in oily ash. I walked past them without speaking, not fear in their eyes, not hate, just recognition. They finally understood what we were. Not monsters, just the last honest thing left in the galaxy. We set the timers and pulled out. Explosions echoed 30 minutes later. Not flashy, controlled, surgical. The towers came down like old monuments collapsing under their own lies. We watched from orbit. No cheering, no satisfaction, only silence, because this wasn't justice. It was memory, etched into every crater. The council responded 3 days later. A transmission, open channel, public. They wanted the galaxy to see it. The feed showed the high arbiters, faces drawn, robes stained with dust from Veradon. The new chamber wasn't a chamber at all, just a makeshift dais in an off-world station. The background flickered. Their control was fracturing. This is an act of annihilation, one of them said, a Larathi delegate. Thin, glowing eyes, reptilian tongue. Humanity has breached every code of interstellar engagement. They've shattered sanctity, desecrated neutrality. I cut the feed. I didn't need to hear lies dressed as law. They weren't grieving. They were afraid. For the first time since humanity crawled into space, the galaxy feared us more than it pitied us. We used to be the desperate ones, the underdogs, the refugees after Earth's sky fell. Now we were the reckoning. The next few weeks blurred. We didn't attack every world, just the ones that mattered, the ones that thought silence bought innocence, medical suppliers who refused our wounded, universities that erased human history, trade stations that sold coordinates to our enemies. They fell like dominoes, and with each one, the galaxy spoke softer. No one said, "Humans are volatile" anymore. Now they said, "Humans remember." We became the story whispered between systems. Parents told their children, "Don't provoke Earth." Captains checked their logs twice before denying a human ship entry. All it took was loss. Ours, then theirs. But something was changing. Not in the galaxy, in us. A soldier named Thorne approached me after our 6th raid. We'd known each other since Europa. He was quiet, lethal, never questioned orders, until now. "We're not soldiers anymore," he said. I didn't answer. He went on. "We're executioners." I looked him in the eyes. "No," I said. "We're the ones who never stopped being human." He didn't ask what I meant. He just nodded and walked away, but I saw it in his eyes. He didn't believe me. Maybe I didn't either. Then came the signal. A human signal. From deep space. A colony we thought was dead. Erebus. It was supposed to be gone. Cut off after the Arcana Purge. We'd written them off. Memorialized them on black stone. But the signal was real. Broken. Distorted. But real. "This is Erebus Station. We survived. Repeat, human survivors requesting extraction." My hands clenched. We rerouted the fleet in 10 minutes. We didn't sleep, we didn't eat. We ran. Because hope was a weapon, too. And we'd forgotten what it felt like. We reached Erebus 6 days later. The station was fractured, spinning in slow orbit around a dead planet. No lights, no beacons. Just the whisper of that signal repeating every 6 hours like a heartbeat refusing to die. We boarded in full armor. Not because we expected a fight, but because we didn't know what we'd find. The interior was dark. Cold. Icy breath in the air. The kind of cold that comes after the power's gone, but something alive remains. We moved slow. One corridor, then another. Then we found them. 57 survivors. Starving. Hollow-eyed, children, elders, soldiers with missing limbs and no voices left. They didn't cheer when they saw us. They just cried. One man, a teacher I think, looked at me and whispered, "You came." I nodded once. He gripped my hand with frost-bitten fingers. "Did we matter?" I knelt, helmet off. "You're the only thing that ever did." We got them aboard. Fed, healed, clothed. And as they slept, I stood in the hangar bay alone, listening to the sound of breath and heartbeat monitors. So few. Too few. But enough. Enough to remember why we started this. Not for vengeance, not for fear, but because somewhere, someone still believed in humanity. Not the government, not the council, us. And now the galaxy would understand. We weren't unstoppable because we were angry. We were unstoppable because we came back from extinction. And we never forgot. Erebus Station drifted in low orbit like a broken promise. Its body bent by years of silence and survival, but still holding together. Barely. The med bay on Valiant Ash smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. Lights dimmed, monitors blinking soft green pulses like distant heartbeats. I stood near the far wall, helmet off, hands behind my back, watching. The survivors didn't speak much. They'd spent too many years speaking into radios that never answered. The children, they stared. At us, at our weapons, at the armor, not with fear, with expectation. They were waiting to see if the stories were true. Stories about Earth's vengeance, the fleets that came from nowhere, the ships painted black like coffins, leaving fire behind. The humans who struck without a word and disappeared like smoke. We were no longer the forgotten. Now we were myth. An engineer named Ral was the first to speak. Mid-40s, scars across his scalp. Eyes too steady for a man who'd watched his family freeze in oxygen failure. He approached me like a soldier, but slower, like someone who didn't want to wake the past. "Commander," he said. Voice gravel. I nodded. "We need to talk." We stepped into a side corridor. Quiet, bare walls, flickering strips of emergency lighting that hadn't been replaced in weeks. Ral didn't waste time. "You think you've won something?" I turned. He didn't flinch. "You took Veradon. You burned their archives. You're cutting through their network like knives in cloth, but you're wrong." He pointed upward, toward nothing in particular. "They're not reeling, they're regrouping. You know what happens when the prey stops running and starts building traps?" I didn't blink. "We aren't prey." "Then you better hope you don't become bait." He handed me a data drive. Recovered it from a shattered Arcana relay off Erebus's edge. Took us 2 years to crack the encryption. I slid it into the nearby panel. The hologram sputtered alive, rough blue light flickering like a flame in wind. I saw images, fast, jagged, military emblems, star charts, internal memos. Then one file opened by itself. It was a video. Short, brutal. An Arcana officer speaking in broken trade common. "Earth retaliation expected. Protocol Sigma in motion. All human genome variants to be flagged under Directive 7. Potential existential threat. Full sanction. No quarter." Ral crossed his arms. "You know what that means?" I did. The council wasn't collapsing. They were preparing to wipe us out completely. We met that night, inner chamber. No ceremony, just us, the leaders, the ghosts who made decisions so others could bleed for them. 20 commanders, all human. We'd built a network since the fall, scattered war fleets across 7 sectors, each born from loss. Each driven by memory. I laid the data drive on the table, projected the footage. No commentary, no theatrics, just truth. When it ended, no one moved. No one looked surprised. Only one spoke. "Finally," Commander Grell muttered. Another leaned forward. "We've been hitting their outposts, scaring them, making them bleed. But this changes everything." "No," I said, stepping in. "It clarifies everything." I tapped the console, zoomed the star map. "They won't negotiate. They won't forgive. They won't stop. That means only one thing." "War," someone whispered. I nodded. "Total. Not raids, not warnings, not scars. Eradication." A silence fell like ash over the room. Some lowered their heads. Some tightened fists. Not one of them walked out. Good. Because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was survival. And we had a plan. 3 days later, we deployed the Spectre Protocol. The name didn't mean anything to outsiders, but to us, it was a promise. It meant no mercy. Our first strike hit the Arcana Crucible shipyards. Massive, lunar-sized forges orbiting a gas giant in the Tresta system. Unarmed, but crucial. Their lifeblood. We didn't just destroy it, we salted it. We jammed all outgoing signals, crippled their escape routes, flooded their oxygen with antimatter nanites, then detonated their stabilizers so the whole moon imploded into itself. No survivors. A whole generation of warships, erased before birth. No announcement, no trace, only blackened gravity and a time stamp. We remember. The second target was worse, a research facility in the Polari Nebula, hidden, unregistered. We found it using old smuggler coordinates and survivor whispers. Inside, we found cells. Human children, 12 of them, hooked to machines, tagged, branded with serial codes, eyes too hollow to scream. They were studying our DNA, enhancing it, weaponizing it. One child had extra vertebrae implanted. Another had 2 hearts, one synthetic. Test subjects, lab meat. We didn't strike from orbit. We walked in, room by room, silent, cold. We killed every scientist, every guard, burned the data, took the children. Only one of them spoke during extraction. A girl, no older than 7, skin like glass from cryo-freeze, voice flat. They said we weren't people. I picked her up. They were wrong. After that, the council lost their mask. They called us terrorists, fanatics, said we were destabilizing galactic order. They forgot they were the ones who taught us to become this. The headlines came fast. Human war fleets breach core systems. Council collapses as member species declare neutrality. Arcana convoy erased in deep space. Child survivors from secret lab spark outrage among non-aligned worlds. I watched the feeds. I didn't feel pride. I felt resolve. We weren't fighting for territory. We were fighting for the right to exist without permission. No council, no charter, just survival. Then came the last line. The line we'd waited for. The council issued an open directive. All human assets are to be neutralized. No quarter, no trial, no exception. And just like that, they declared extinction. That was their mistake, because they believed that if they pushed us far enough, we'd break. But humanity doesn't break. We ignite. I stood in the observation deck that night, watching stars drift past the glass. One of the Erebus children sat near the railing, a boy, maybe 10, quiet. I approached him, sat beside him. He didn't look at me. "Is it true?" he asked. "What?" "That Earth's gone." I paused, then nodded. "Yeah, it's gone." He swallowed hard. "But not us," I said. He looked at me. "Then where do we go?" I stared out the glass, watched a comet peel across the void like a scar. "We go forward." The war changed after Erebus. We weren't ghosts anymore. We were the storm. Every strike we made now was met with panic, not resistance. Ships scattered, colonies evacuated. The Council's authority fractured. Half of their vassal races fell silent, refusing to answer hails. The other half begged for neutrality, but there was no neutral ground anymore. Not after what they'd done to our children. Not after they declared our DNA a threat. We didn't need allies. We needed targets. We pushed deeper than we ever had before, into their heart systems, past the bastions they said were untouchable. I watched entire battle groups vanish under our assault. Arcana carriers, once symbols of dominance, reduced to slag in orbit. We were leaner, meaner, hungrier. They still thought in terms of numbers, territory, power blocks, but we weren't playing their game. We were playing ours. Hit, vanish, hit again. Don't fight their fleets, bleed their systems. The strategy wasn't conquest. It was attrition, psychological, existential. Make them afraid to sleep. Make them afraid to speak our name. Then the Council did something unexpected. They called for a ceasefire, a summit. It was a trap. Every man on my crew knew it. But I agreed, because we weren't showing up to talk. We were showing up to finish what Veridon started. The summit was held on Kyril, a neutral station on the edge of Council-controlled space. Massive, sterile, white stone architecture floating inside a shimmering energy shell. They dressed it up like peace, but all I saw was a mausoleum. I brought 10 of our finest, all veterans, all armored. We stepped through the docking gates in silence. No banners, no representatives, just black armor, heavy boots, and weapons we didn't show but everyone felt. Ithran met me at the gates. "Still not wearing insignia?" he asked. I didn't reply. "Even now you don't carry your flag?" "There's only one thing we carry," I said. He glanced at my men. "Let me guess, memory." I stared at him. "And a loaded gun." He didn't smile. Good. This wasn't a place for smiles. The council chamber was smaller than I expected. Circular, cold, no ceremony, just voices echoing too loudly across polished stone. They were already seated, 12 species. The new High Arbiter was a Crithian female, her long silver limbs folded beneath a ceremonial robe that stank of desperation. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Commander, we welcome your delegation." I sat. No bow, no salute. I was done pretending. She cleared her throat. "Humanity has proven its resolve. We acknowledge your retaliation. We acknowledge your pain. But surely you understand, this path of bloodshed cannot continue." My voice cut through the room. "You knew what they were doing on Erebus." Silence. I let it linger. "You all knew. And you turned your eyes away while our children were butchered. You let Arcana unleash fire on cities with no defenses. You called us dangerous when we tried to defend ourselves, and now you ask for peace?" One of the delegates, a tall, Yari noble, leaned forward. "We did not sanction those experiments. They were rogue." "Don't insult me," I said flatly. Another voice, Valari, low and smooth. "If you persist, Commander, you will drag the galaxy into an extinction war. Then you better pray it's yours." They didn't understand. They still thought we were trying to survive. We weren't. We were making sure they didn't. The Crithian Arbiter held up a hand. "Perhaps we can reach a compromise. Perhaps a path forward exists. Cease hostilities. Restore diplomatic—" "Enough," I said. I stood. Every eye followed me. I walked to the center of the chamber and placed something on the floor. A helmet. Burned. Cracked. Blood dried across the visor. It belonged to Lieutenant Harrow, killed in the first wave of the Arcana bombardment of Titan. His body was never recovered. "This is what your peace looks like." They stared. No one spoke. "I want every one of you to remember this moment. Remember what you said, what you didn't say. When we come for your worlds, your ships, your cities, remember you had a chance to end it." The Crithian's voice wavered. "Commander, what is it you want?" I looked her in the eyes. "We don't want your apology. We don't want your promises." I leaned forward. "We want you to fear us." Then I turned and walked out. The silence behind me was deafening. An hour later, their station exploded. Not from us, from them. Internal sabotage. One of their own. The Valari delegate. He had left a message. Short. Shaky. "They warned us, and we didn't listen. I won't die with your guilt on my name." The blast killed 7 of the 12. The others survived. Barely. The message spread across the galaxy in under a day. The humans came to talk. The council tried to play games, and one of their own chose to die with honor rather than live in shame. We didn't respond. We didn't have to. The galaxy responded for us. After Karel, the floodgates broke. More council species broke rank. Neutral factions offered safe harbor. Independent worlds swore fealty to the human fleet. Not out of loyalty, but out of fear. That was enough. We didn't need friends. We needed space. But not all of us agreed. Inside our own fleet, cracks were forming. Some of the younger commanders questioned the strikes. Not out loud, not in meetings, but in quiet conversations. Was there a line? Had we already crossed it? I knew the answer. There was no line. Not when they took your home. Not when they branded your blood. Not when they fed your children into labs and called it science. Thorne came to me again. This time his voice was harder. We're building a graveyard, not a future. I didn't argue. He sighed. And when the last council world burns, what's left? I looked at him. We are. He stared at me like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. He saluted and walked away. 2 days later, we received a signal from deep space. Not council, not ally. It was human, but encrypted in a code we hadn't used since before the fall of Earth. We decrypted it slowly. Message brief. They're building something. Sector A1-73. Planet dark, off-grid. Not council, not Arcana. Worse. I stared at the location. The blood in my veins felt colder. That system wasn't on any current map, but I remembered it. Project Halex, an abandoned human black site, lost before the war, classified, forgotten, but not erased. The message ended with 6 words. We thought it was dead. It's not. I closed my eyes, because I knew what it meant. The war wasn't ending. It was evolving, and whatever waited in that system, it wasn't built by aliens. It was built by us. The stars above Sector A173 were wrong. Not broken. Just wrong. They pulsed too slow. Gravity bent light in ways that didn't obey logic. The void felt thicker here. Not like space. Like something watching back. We dropped out of warp in silence. No fanfare, no comms. Just the hum of power cells and the sharp breath of men who knew they were walking into history's mouth. Project Halex. A name older than most of the soldiers on this ship. It had been erased from maps, databases, even Earth's final records. I only knew about it because my father whispered it to me once, after too many drinks, and just before sleep took him. He said Halex was a mistake, humanity buried so deep even the council couldn't find it. But something had dug it back up, and it was alive. We deployed a recon drop, low orbit, skimming the planet's dead atmosphere. No cities, no signals, no response, just ash plains, jagged mountain rings, and ruins buried under dust like the bones of something ancient. My boots hit the ground with a soft crunch. The air was thick. Breathing wasn't advised. We kept helmets sealed. Squad moved tight. 12 men, all veterans. Faces hidden, guns raised, heartbeats low. The site was 5 clicks north. A single structure, half submerged, tall, black. Built like a tower but shaped more like a dagger plunged into the earth. It pulsed, not light, not sound, something in between, like a heartbeat, slow and low. One of the men, Tyron, muttered, "This doesn't feel human." I responded without turning. "It is." He didn't ask how I knew, because we all felt it, that wrongness, the unmistakable fingerprint of human desperation taken too far. We reached the base of the tower. Rusted door, sealed by time, not tech. I touched the metal, warm, the kind of warmth that suggested something breathing inside. I nodded to the breach team. They didn't hesitate. Charges set. Silent countdown. Controlled blast. Dust and memory erupted in a low boom. Then, open. Darkness inside. Thick and hungry. We entered. The interior was untouched by time. Walls of carbon weave, matte black, unscathed by decades of abandonment. Lights flickered on by themselves as we passed. Not all at once, one by one, like it was watching. A long corridor stretched ahead, leading down. Stairs. Elevators had rusted away or been dismantled. We went on foot. Each level deeper, the air grew colder, denser. We passed observation decks, sealed labs, cryo chambers with shattered glass and long-dried blood. Then we reached level 9. The door opened before we touched it, and what we saw inside didn't belong to this world. It was a chamber of thrones. Not royalty, not command, Subjects, 10 pods, each housing something that might have once been human, now twisted, enhanced, limbs reinforced with metal, veins glowing with synthetic compounds, eyes replaced by black glass. Artificial evolution, an old idea, a brutal one. Take the strongest humans. Break them, rebuild them, burn out fear, replace instinct with command, make soldiers that didn't need food, rest, or mercy, make monsters that remembered how to scream. The tag on the first pod said, Unit ZO1, Amon, Combat Threshold. 12.03, Status, Dormant, Warning, Reactivation Prohibited, Amon. That name hit the back of my mind like a memory trying to claw free. I turned to the console, booted the system, old human code, pre-unification Earth, still running. There was a message, a recording, text only, last log from the project director. We made them too well. They stopped obeying after the second generation, not because of failure, because of awareness. They started dreaming, started asking questions. Unit 01 refused to kill after the Turnen uprising. He said, and I quote, "They looked like us." He looked at me and said, "If you don't open this door, I will. I just want to walk out." I sealed him inside. I destroyed the control core. I thought it was enough. If you're reading this, leave. They are not sleeping. They are waiting. Tyron leaned in. "Commander, what the hell is this?" I didn't answer, because I remembered now. My father hadn't told me everything. Helix wasn't just a weapon project. It was Earth's last line of survival, before the Council even made contact. A secret backup plan. If diplomacy failed, if alliances broke, if humanity was ever pushed to the brink, unleash them. I moved to the pod labeled Unit 01, Amon. His face was mostly covered in a reinforced mask, eyes shielded by plates. But even through the barrier, I could feel him watching. Alive. Awake. I reached out. His eyes snapped open, black, reflective, no white, no iris, just cold, perfect observation. My men raised weapons instantly. "Hold," I said. Tyron's voice cracked. "Sir, he's awake." I said, "Hold." No sound from the pod, but the lights around it changed. The entire room dimmed slightly, except for a soft pulse across the glass in front of Amon. A voice came through, low, too calm. "How long?" I swallowed. 86 years since Earth fell. "The Council?" "Still hunting us." "And you?" I stepped forward. "Humanity's retaliation." "Good." The pulse stopped, and the pod began to open. My men stepped back, weapons ready, one safety off. I held up a hand. "Let it open." The chamber hissed. Steam rolled out. Amon stepped forward, slow, precise. His body was taller than ours, heavy armor grown into skin, not metal, not flesh. Something in between. His voice carried without speakers. "Is there still a chain of command?" I nodded. "There is." "Then I need orders." Amon wasn't alone. We activated 2 more that day, Units 03 and 07. The rest we left sealed, for now. They walked like machines, but moved like men. No expressions, no hesitation, no need for rest. They didn't speak unless spoken to, but their eyes, those black eyes, watched everything. I brought them aboard the Valiant Ash. Not everyone was happy. Thorne stared at them from the hallway. "You really think this is the answer?" "No," I said, "but it's the only card we haven't played." He looked away. "These things, they're not human." I shook my head. "They're exactly what the Council turned us into. We just got there slower." We tested Amon in a controlled combat sim. No live targets. Just synthetic drones modeled after Arcana shock troops. They lasted 7 seconds. Not because he was fast, because he was efficient. No wasted movement, no excess. He moved like someone who'd studied death and decided to improve it. After the test, I approached him. "Amon," he turned. "Why did you stop killing?" He didn't blink. I didn't stop. I waited. For what? The right war. Now we had something worse than fear. We had weapons the galaxy thought were myths. Word spread fast. Rumors about humans awakening, the forgotten. Stories of silent monsters walking beside us. Of black-armored giants that spoke only when killing. We didn't deny it. We let the stories grow, let them turn into legend. Because fear was our first weapon. And myth was our second. Next target, Velari Prime, not a military world, not strategic, but symbolic. It was where the original embargo was voted in, where humanity was officially labeled a threat species, where they turned their back on us when we begged for aid, and it was undefended. When our fleet arrived, they tried to run. We didn't fire. We sent them Amon. He walked alone onto the surface. No backup, no drones, no ship cover, just him. I watched from orbit as the buildings collapsed. Not burned, not bombed, just torn apart. He left one message behind, carved into the ruins of their Senate building. You judged us. Now we return the favor. No survivors. None claimed. But thousands watched. And the council? They stopped sending fleets. They started fleeing. The war wasn't over. But the tone had changed. They used to fight like conquerors. Now they fought like survivors. And deep in the void, other forces stirred. I saw them in the data feeds, old frequencies, forgotten codes, whispers from dark systems where no living species should remain. Helix wasn't the only thing we'd buried. And the deeper we dug, the closer we got to the truth. The war didn't start when the Council betrayed us. It started long before that, before Earth, before memory. And whatever was waiting knew we were coming. 3 weeks after Velari Prime fell, the galaxy stopped speaking. No transmissions, no protests, no retaliation. Just silence. It was the kind that came before a funeral. Not for the ones we'd killed. For the ones still alive, realizing they were next. But I knew it wasn't fear that held their tongues. Not anymore. It was what was coming. We'd awakened more than weapons on Helix. We'd cracked the floorboards of history and found something buried beneath even our mistakes. Something older than the Council. Older than any records in the Galactic archives. And now, it was waking up. We first caught the signal while intercepting a scavenger drone in the Briska Expanse. Junkers, leftover tech scavengers who raided battlefields and deep space wrecks. The drone was dead when we found it. Half its frame melted, the rest twisted like something inside had tried to claw its way out. But its black box had power, encrypted. Not in Council script, not human either. It took Amon 6 minutes to decrypt it. He said nothing after. Just handed me the data chip. And stared. Like he'd seen a ghost. I loaded the file in the war room. One image. Grainy. Time-stamped 20 hours before the drone's destruction. A planet. Charred. Cracked. Orbiting nothing. Drifting like it had broken free from the rules of gravity. But it wasn't the planet that chilled the room. It was the thing above it. It didn't have a shape. Not really. Not something the human mind could understand. It looked like scaffolding, but alive. Moving without moving. Massive arms curled into infinity. Dark matter spiraling through its limbs like blood, and embedded at its core. A human structure. Rusting. Dying. Bleeding into the void. Eamon leaned forward, voice flat. That's Site 0. I turned. You're sure? He didn't blink. It's where we were born. Site 0. It was never on any record. It predated Earth's expansion. Predated Earth. A hidden platform built to test the first human-alien interface experiments. Not with the Council species, with something else? Something we never should have touched. Rumors called it the Root. Old Earth black budget whispers. The myth said we didn't invent FTL. We found it. Buried tech, deep in Mars, cracked and dead, but still humming with energy. Humanity thought it was a gift. It was a test. And Site Zero was the lab where they tried to answer it. Eamon stood near the screen. Still. Silent. Like the gravity of the image was pulling him back in time. I spoke low. How did you survive it? His answer was slower this time. We didn't. The decision was made. We had to go there. Council space didn't matter anymore. This war, our war, was shifting. The Council had broken us. We'd returned the favor. But this thing, this root, it wasn't interested in politics. It was watching, waiting. It had been here long before us. It would be here long after. Unless we ended it. We brought only 2 ships, Valiant Ash and Dirge Wind. No fleet, no backup, just silence. You don't take armies into places that predate war. The system had no name, no star, no heat, just black. We dropped in from warp at minimum distance. Even our FTL drives screamed against the laws around this place. Space bent wrong here. Our sensors glitched before stabilizing. One of the bridge crew vomited in his helmet. Then we saw it. The structure. Half alive, half built. All impossible. Stretching across the void like it had always been there. Like the galaxy had formed around it. And at its core, the broken spine of Site Zero. Twisted walkways. Dead lights. Towers shattered open like rib cages. We went in. Eamon insisted on going first. I let him. He, Unit 07, and 2 recon squads launched toward the platform, small shuttles. No sound. They touched down in silence. No opposition. Just bones. Human. Some with armor we didn't recognize. Some with armor that shouldn't exist. Eamon entered the central chamber. I watched through his helmet feed. Inside, the walls were covered in runes. Not written. Burned. They pulsed with faint red glow, almost biological. Something had written a warning. But not for us. For them. Whatever had built the root. They didn't mean for us to understand, Eamon said. But we learned anyway. What did you learn? I asked. His eyes, those black pits of memory, stared into the camera. They were afraid of us. Back on the bridge, I studied the scan returns. The route was empty. No life, no ships, no signals, but it was awake. I could feel it, the kind of feeling that came before thunder. The kind that settled in your bones and whispered something ancient. You do not belong here. But we didn't belong anywhere anymore. That was the point. Eamon triggered the core. He found a panel buried under rubble. Human interface. Old code. Still running. Not power. Not AI. Something older. It activated the root. The stars blinked. Time slowed. And in that moment, we heard it. Not sound, not language, and emotion, recognition, like it had been waiting for us to return. And the message it sent? You learned too fast. You survived too long. Now we must begin again. That's when the sky changed. Hundreds of small shapes peeled away from the root's surface. Drones, creatures, vessels, if they could be called that. No engines, just movement, like thought made real. They came for us, fast, no sound, no light, just speed. They didn't fire. They touched. One drone hit the dirge wind. Didn't explode, just sank into the hull like water soaking flesh. The ship screamed. Inside my headset, I heard the crew die. Not with pain, with silence, the kind that meant their minds had been unmade. I gave the order. Fall back. Now. We pulled Eamon and the squads back just as the root began to unfold. Its arms expanded, reaching toward us like a god stretching for its creation. I stared into that impossible machine, and I understood. We were never meant to reach the stars. We were never meant to survive the Council. We were never meant to exist beyond Earth. But we did. And that was our original sin. We jumped. Barely made it. Left Site 0 behind. But not the war. Because now we knew what lay at the center of everything. The Council was never the enemy. They were just caretakers. Gatekeepers, trying to hold the locks shut while we clawed at the door. Now the door was open, and the Root knew we were still alive. Back on the Valiant Ash, the crew was silent. Thorne sat beside me in the war room, eyes sunken, hands shaking slightly. "It wasn't alien," he said. I nodded. "No. It was us." "No," I said. "It was worse." He looked up. "It was what we could become. We had a choice now. Run or finish it." Eamon stood behind me, unblinking. "If we wait," he said, "it grows." "How do you kill something like that?" "You don't." He stepped forward. "You show it why it was afraid." The galaxy thought it knew humanity. Thought it had seen what we were capable of. They hadn't seen anything yet. Because this war didn't start with the Council. It didn't start with Earthfall. It started with the first human who dared to question silence. And now, humanity had found the voice of the stars. And it sounded like vengeance. We didn't speak of the Root. Not to allies. Not to civilians. Not even among ourselves. Some things were too old, too dangerous to name. We called it the Silence. Not because it was quiet, but because silence was the only thing left after it touched you. And now, it was coming. Not fast, not loud, but certain. 2 standard days after our escape from Site 0, we received the first report. A fringe colony, human-settled, neutral since the Europa massacre. It had been quiet, unarmed, barely on the map, gone, not bombarded, not raided, just erased. Scouts found orbiting debris shaped like bone. No survivors, no heat signatures, no memories, only a signal carved into one drifting satellite, repeating in dead human code. "We warned you." The Council re-established contact. Desperation is the language of diplomacy. A hologram shimmered to life on my bridge. The High Arbiter stood in front of a fractured window on their orbital refuge, robes scorched, voice trembling. "Commander," she said, "we need to unite." I said nothing. "The thing from Site 0, it's not human. It's not ours." I cut the feed. She wasn't wrong. It wasn't ours. But it had seen us. It had touched us. And now it followed us. No alliance would stop it. Only fire might. We began to consolidate. All surviving human fleets answered the call. Remnants from shattered colonies. Rogue cruisers long thought destroyed. Warlords and exiles who'd turned their backs on civilization, but never forgot where they came from. They came in silence. We didn't rally under flags. Only under memory. 17 ships, 2,000 men. Less than a fraction of what the Council once wielded. But every soldier here had seen their world burn, and none of them came to survive. They came to end it. In the center of it all stood Amun. He didn't command, he didn't direct, but every man watched him. He was proof of what humanity could become when pushed beyond biology, beyond fear, beyond death. We asked nothing from him. And yet, we all waited for him to move, because when he did, the war would truly begin. Our plan was suicide. That was the point. Site 0 was waking up, and it was calling. We intercepted signals bleeding through gravity, echoes of old human voices twisted in languages we never taught our machines. Laughter, screaming. Then silence. We traced them to the Root's expansion. It was building now. Growing arms, unfolding new limbs into uncharted systems, moving without moving, its presence corrupting matter. Reality itself bending like it was sick. If it reached inhabited space, there wouldn't be war. There would be conversion. We gathered at the edge of the dead Halo system. 7 jumps from the Root, close enough to die, far enough to choose how. Eamon joined me on the observation deck. No armor now, just his frame, towering, scarred with metal and memory. His voice was calm. "You don't have to come." I turned to him. "You want me to stay behind?" "I want you to remember who we are." "You think I've forgotten?" "I think you've been trying to." I walked past him, stopped at the glass, watched the stars shift. "Tell me the truth," I said. "What is the root?" Eamon stepped beside me, voice like iron. "It's the first failure." "Of what?" "Creation." I looked up, and for the first time since Earth burned, I felt small. We jumped the next day, straight into the mouth of the dark. The root filled half the sky before we even cleared the slipstream. It had grown, massive now. Its limbs reached across systems, drinking gravity, devouring starlight. Orbiting it were fragments, wreckage from civilizations long gone. Shapes not meant for human eyes, weapons melted to bone, and at its center, Site Zero, still pulsing, still calling. We didn't wait. No war cries, just action. Valiant Ash led the charge. Our cannons lit up the void, hammering the root's limbs. Beams of accelerated matter sliced across its skin, if it had skin. No screams, just the sound of our own rage. And then it responded. Drones poured out by the thousands, not machines. Not alive, just movement shaped like thought. They hit our fleet like a wave. Ships vanished in seconds. Minds went blank mid-transmission. One man screamed in a language we'd never spoken. Another laughed until his blood poured from his ears. I gave the order. Hold line. Push forward. The dead didn't fall back. Neither would we. Amen led the breach. He and Unit 07 launched in drop pods straight into the root's core. No cover, no extraction plan. Just a mission. Reach the seed, kill it. The seed was what powered the root, not an engine, a being. Maybe once human, maybe not. Now twisted into a throne of code and matter. Eamon never looked back. His pod breached the surface. We lost his signal immediately. My ship took 3 hits, one from a drone that embedded in the hull and started singing. We tore it out with thermal lances. The song didn't stop for hours. One of my gunners tried to open the airlock without a suit. Said his mother was out there. She'd been dead 12 years. I didn't stop him. I let the stars take him. Sometimes death was the kindest thing left. Hours passed, then silence. No more drones, no more interference, just stillness, like a beast sleeping after a meal. Then Eamon's voice cracked through the static, weak, glitching. "Seed, dying, not enough." I grabbed the comm. "Eamon, say again." "It's not a mind, it's a mirror." "What?" "It became what we made it fear." I didn't understand. Then I heard it, a new sound, deep, low, like a billion human voices all breathing in at once, and then screaming. The root wasn't dead. It was becoming. It had absorbed Eamon, his strength, his thoughts, his rage, and it had learned. Now it knew us. And it liked us, because it was us, a future version, perfected, empty, silent, unstoppable. We couldn't kill it, not anymore, but we could seal it. The plan was instant. We had one prototype, an Omega-class singularity core. Not a bomb, a black hole. A last resort we swore never to use. Now we had no choice. We prepped it on Valiant Ash while the rest of the fleet drew the root's attention. Ship by ship, they sacrificed themselves without asking. No orders, just duty. One by one the lights went dark. Until it was just us, I stayed with the core. My crew had already left. Escape pods gone. Set on slow drifts back to human space. I didn't watch them go. Didn't want to remember their faces. Thorne was the last to leave. He looked at me one last time. "You were right." I shook my head. "We were all wrong." He nodded. Then was gone. I activated the core, watched it hum with blue light, felt my skin pull toward it before the dampeners kicked in. Time slowed, space cracked, the root stirred. And then I saw him. Amon, or what was left, his face formed in the static of my shattered screen, twisted, quiet. He didn't speak, just looked at me, not with anger, with peace, like he was free. I nodded to the ghost and let go. The last thing I heard was silence. Real silence. Not fear, not rage, just the end. There was no light, no fire, no scream, just a ripple through the void, like a stone dropped in eternity. The Omega core detonated within the heart of the root, and then nothing. Not an explosion. Not a shockwave. A folding. Space inverted, light devoured itself. Time gasped and collapsed in on a single breath. And the root, the thing that had haunted the stars long before we dared to climb them, was gone. Not defeated. Contained. Buried in the only prison it could never break. Oblivion. They found my escape pod drifting 19 days later. I don't remember launching it. I don't remember leaving Valiant Ash. I remember the hum of the core, the tremble of the deck, the final stare from Amon. Then black. They say my vitals were flat for 14 minutes. They said I should be dead, but Death and I made an agreement long ago. I gave it everything I had, and in return, it let me watch. The war was over. Not with surrender. Not with peace. With memory. The council fell, not by fire, but by silence. After the root, they lost the will to rule. Their fleets scattered, their colonies fractured. No one wanted a seat at a table that no longer existed. They turned inward, afraid of what we might do next. We didn't chase them. We didn't need to. Humanity had stopped fighting for survival. Now we were something else. The survivors returned. 17 ships became 9, 9 became 3, then 2, and finally, just 1. The remnant Dawn. She carried the last crew of the Retaliation fleet, seared black, scarred through time, but still flying. They say her engine sings in the dark, a song no other ship has, a song of names. The ones we lost, the ones we became, and the ones who never came back. Thorn was one of the last to speak at the remembrance. His voice was older, cracked, like the war had wrapped around his lungs and never fully let go. He stood before the wall of names, etched into obsidian on the memorial ring above what was once Titan's orbit. I watched from the shadows. He spoke only 6 words. We were never supposed to win. Then walked away. And no one followed, because nothing more needed to be said. The children from Erebus live now in orbit. They build ships, not weapons. They write books, not reports. They ask questions, not for revenge, but for understanding. Sometimes I watch them from the outer platforms. None of them know my name. Good. That means we did our job. We were never meant to be heroes. We were meant to be warnings. And warnings don't wear medals. They wear scars. I visit Amon's grave once a year. There's no body, no marker. Just a stone, flat and cold, in the field of ash on the moon of Kale's Hollow. I place my hand on it. Say nothing. He wouldn't want words. He was never human, not by biology. But in the end, he taught us what humanity really meant. It wasn't blood. It wasn't loyalty, it was choice. He chose to protect a species that made him in its own image, then discarded him like trash. And in return, he gave us a future, a chance to try again. There are whispers now, old enemies sending envoys, treaties floating through the air like ghosts unsure of their purpose. No one tells them no. No one tells them yes. We just listen. Because power doesn't come from noise. It comes from stillness. And there is nothing more still than a human fleet waiting to decide if you deserve forgiveness. The galaxy watches us now with fear and reverence, not because we conquered, but because we endured. They saw our skies fall, our cities burn, our people broken. And then they saw us rise from the ashes, not with songs, but with silence. We became myth, then we became memory. And now, we are something worse. We are understood. There's a saying now in council space, whispered in back rooms, in low voices, usually followed by silence. Don't make the humans remember, because they know what happens when we do. They remember Veradon, Terev, Karel, Site Zero, the Root. They remember the Retaliation. And they know we didn't fight to win. We fought so that no one would ever forget what happens when you try to erase the last human standing. Because when the fires burn out, when the war ends, when the stars fall silent, we are what remains.